down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I see the horde of whiskey warriors, the group of malcontents and miscreants forming together, but I also see that there are some challenges for some people. They're bouncing all over. I've got a couple of people who usually are on Twitch going over to Rumble, which is awesome. I've got a couple people on Rumble who have gone over to Facebook saying Rumble's having some problems. And yeah, we've got some challenges bouncing around. I can tell you that I had a problem earlier with Rumble, and I know that there were some other people that were having problems with Rumble earlier. So hopefully the stream and everything will stay solid tonight, because I know that there's been some technical issues, like Rumble, for an example, earlier this week had a distributed denial of service attack, a DDoS attack, also known as a DDoS attack. And what I've been Jody, I'll get to that. Jody over on Facebook. I'll answer your question here in just a second. But I can tell you this much, that a distributed denial of service attack is basically when a group of machines, computers, they all get together and they all make a slew of requests to a website or a particular service or server. And what ends up happening is that server gets so overloaded with all of the fake requests that it can no longer respond properly to the proper request. And that is essentially what's called a denial of service attack. The distributed part comes from the fact that it is spread across multiple IP addresses, multiple computers coming from multiple locations. That's essentially what a DDoS is. And yes, my geek is showing. All right. So we've got, and then we have some other people who are saying that things are going well. So hopefully things are gonna work out quite well for everybody tonight. Thank you all for joining. I don't know if anybody has noticed, but I've started a campaign for 2023. My goal is to reach to 10,000. That's 10,000 subscriptions over on Rumble, and you guys can help by sharing and forwarding and passing out links to my site when I go live, things like that. I really appreciate it. I want to try and get to 10,000 for the year of 2023. That is my goal. Now, let me go back to a question that was posed by Jody over on Facebook. She asks, where are you? It always appears to be snowing. Well, for those of you that don't know, okay, I use a green screen effect for what I have out here. And yeah, so this is a video that's playing on essentially a fake set. So this video came from, I don't know, the YouTube or something. I grabbed it, and yes, it is always snowing. And the reason why I always like the snow is because of the fact that I love winter. I mean, I love the snow. I love winter. I would love for my hometown to look like this all the time. I would love to have a mountain cabin where it would be like this. And so, obviously I don't live in those places. And so I have to kind of create my own world, which is essentially where we're at. You'll see this background change as we start moving into spring and summer and that kind of stuff. It'll start changing again, and it'll probably go to, like the whiskey barrels and all this other stuff. So yes, this is my winter scene. As you can see, I've got the fire going in the background. I don't know if you can hear, but there's some snapping and crackling and popping from the background fireplace going on there. And yes, that is exactly why. Because of the fact that I love winter. I love mountain cabins, and there we go. All right, couple of things. I have an announcement. I know last Saturday I talked about the water moccasins, Outlaw Dogs and her water moccasins going up against their rivals tonight. I don't have the actual results from the meet, whether or not the entire team won or not. But from the Outlaw Dogs, she sent me a DM over Twitter. Thanks to the Mountaineers for coming down and swimming with us today. The water moccasins had many personal best times and fast relays. We also have one new broken pool record. And this broken pool record, or pool record that got broken, was broken by Dylan S. on the 200-meter freestyle with a time of I'm going to guess this is 2 minutes, 22 seconds, 22.37 seconds, I should say, smashing the old pool record of 2 minutes, 26.15 seconds. Congratulations, Dylan S., for breaking that record. Hopefully that will stand for a long bit of time out there. And you know, I'm sure congratulations to the rest of the water moccasins because of the fact that they, they went out and they did a lot of personal best times and things like that. So that is absolutely fantastic. All right. Tonight, I am going back to an oldie but a goodie. This is the Redbreast Single Pot Still 12. Wait for the camera to get focused on it. And this is an Irish whiskey, and I don't have very much left in the bottle. I've got maybe one more glass. I know you can't see it because of the green coloring and the darkness of the bottle, but I've probably got about one more glass there. And so that's what that is. Going on in my glass right here. So, and I am hoping that before next Saturday, at least I'm being told, that before next Saturday, I will have a bottle of the American Badass Whiskey, which is the sponsor of True Grit Roots Network, but that is not the sponsor for tonight. The sponsor for tonight is a favorite of, quite a few people, including myself. Tonight's sponsor, whoops, I messed that up. Hold on. Okay, well, forget the store.whiskeymusings.online. I'm kind of messed that up. That's actually supposed to be IOTC.whiskeymusings.online, but here, let me read this. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online to get great content and learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or, if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. And this is a great keepsake. It's got about 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather. The pages inside are water resistant. And look at that binding. That is an actual stitched binding that goes all the way through. This thing from the manufacturer has a 100-year guarantee against materials and workmanship. In other words, if something goes wrong during the time that you own it, that is not due to, of course, abuse or whatever, that we go ahead and they will either repair it or replace it for free anytime in the 100 years. This is a great keepsake. I know of one young man, my youngest fan, 12-year-old young man who got this for a Christmas gift in his stocking, or actually I think he got it earlier than that. Yeah, so he enjoys it. He's learning about the Constitution, and he listens to the show. I love that. I love my young listeners. I also love the fact that I have another young listener by the name of Z, who I have seen in the chat over on Rumble. And so thank you to the Institute on the Constitution for that wonderful piece of workmanship in the Constitution of the United States, our precious founding document, and also for allowing me to be a affiliate and an affiliate and basically being a sponsor for the show. All right, so here we go. We're going to get started off with On This Day in American History. And, of course, on this segment of the show, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, which is a huge resource on things for the United States, for America's founding, little factoids and figures about history and all these things that come from us. It's written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. Go ahead and pick that up at any place books are sold. No, I am not getting any money off of that at all. So this is a fabulous book. I think every American should have it and read from it. It's a daily insight into our history. And tonight we're talking about January 28th. They led the way. Disaster struck America's space program on January 28th, 1986, shortly after the space shuttle Challenger lifted off from its launch pad at Cape Canaveral, Florida. 73 seconds into its flight, Challenger suddenly disintegrated into a ball of fire. Millions of Americans watched their televisions in horror as the shuttle fell to the ocean, killing the 7 crew members. Among the astronauts was Krista McAuliffe, who had spent months training to become the nation's first teacher in space. An investigation concluded that the explosion was caused by a faulty O-ring and seal in one of the shuttle's solid fuel rockets. It was not the first or last tragedy of the space program. On January 27th, 1967, astronauts Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee were in their command module at Cape Canaveral, conducting a pre-flight test for the first Apollo manned mission, when one of them reported, "Fire, I smell fire." Seconds later, flames swept through the capsule. Technicians rushed to get the hatch open, but the heat and smoke drove them back. The 3 crew members perished. On February 1st, 2003, the shuttle Columbia disintegrated in flames over Texas as it headed for a landing at Cape Canaveral. All 7 astronauts aboard died. Debris rained down over hundreds of square miles in Texas and Louisiana. Scores of American astronauts have risked their lives to lead the world into space. Those who perished were pulling us into the future and will continue to follow them. As President Reagan noted after the Challenger disaster, we will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them, as they prepared for the journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. Now, the funny thing about the Challenger, it's not funny, but one of the things about the Challenger disaster is the fact that I was actually homesick from school that day, and that was the only thing that was being transmitted on television. And it probably was a couple of hours into it when I was able to, after watching the same footage over and over and over again, where I pretty much said to myself, oh, it looks like it came from the O-ring in between like the shuttle and the solid booster rocket and the tank and everything else. And that pretty much is where that O-ring was from. So, and I remember both Challenger and Columbia. I remember both of them. And the disasters and all the parts and pieces. And they were cleaning up after Texas for, over Texas and around Texas for weeks afterward. AC Go? I'm not quite sure how you pronounce your last name. It's Gaugh. I'm thinking it's either Gaw or Goff. It's saying good evening to me. Well, good evening, AC. Thank you for coming over and watching the program. That is awesome. All right. So tonight we have a couple of things in particular that happened that have happened this past week. One of them is a couple of articles that I do have basically have some of what our Democrats who are demonstrating once again how naive and it's like laugh. Okay, gaff. So Gaugh is gaff, I'm guessing. Hard G? Guessing a hard G. All right. So the first one, I mean, I don't know if anybody has ever listened to this guy, seriously, speak. He was mocked a few years ago about calling himself Spartacus. I am Spartacus, and that whole thing came out. And, it just, I mean, Cory Booker demonstrates every single time that he opens up his mouth and starts talking that his intelligence quotient really is probably less than the alcohol content that I have in my glass right now. And the reason being is because he has repeated the exact same debunked lie every time he gets in front of a camera. And let me show you and explain to you what I am talking about here. So Cory Booker apparently claimed on camera that more Americans died from gun violence in the time that he's been alive. And keep in mind, he's about 53, okay? In the time that he has been alive than in all wars combined. Well, that is an obvious falsehood. That is an obvious falsehood. And it is clearly able to be debunked. He has made that same claim apparently in multiple times. And so here's exactly what he said. He said, "We have more people in America in my short lifetime that have died due to gun violence than in every single one of our wars, from the Civil War and the Revolutionary War to the wars in the Middle East combined." Okay. Now, he posted a video clip of these comments, and the caption that echoed it, and you can kind of see it right here, over on Twitter. And he says, "I'm 53 years old and I've seen more Americans die from domestic gun violence than from all our wars combined. Let that sink in." All right. So here's the problem. All right. First of all, in 50 years, there is absolutely no way, no way that we have had, excuse me for a second. No way that they have had that many gun violence deaths. Keep that in mind. Gun violence deaths. And the reason that he can even come close to making this claim, or at least make it seem like he's coming close, is because of the fact that he actually, and this has been demonstrated multiple times, but he actually includes things like gun suicides and accidental discharges. Now, here's the thing about that. Yes, those statistics do get placed in the idea of gun deaths. Okay. Gun deaths as a statistic. But the thing about it is that, the statistics that are used for gun suicides and accidental discharges are not considered gun violence. All right. Gun violence would be exclusively where a perpetrator with a gun shoots somebody else. That would be a gun violence death. Now, that being said, it still doesn't come to the number that he is referring to. All right. And honestly, he's talked about this and he's used this line on multiple occasions. And a lot of these dopey liberals, they all sit there and they go, yeah, that's true. That's true. But in reality, I mean, these guys are manipulating numbers, and they're manipulating the understanding of how the numbers are coming up. Now, way down at the bottom of the piece, because they go through and they have a lot of people in here who are picking on him quite a bit. But first of all, there's little indication that Cory Booker is ever going to apologize because of the fact that he's made the same claim numerous times. So, I'm going to be honest with you. If you make a mistake once, okay, I can understand it. If you make a mistake and you say something like that, then okay, I get it. If you make that mistake, but because he keeps going back to that same statistic, it tells me that either he hasn't been told, which I think is completely false. I'm pretty sure somebody has told him, hey, you better quit, knock that off. But the other side, of course, is the fact that he is a complete and utter moron when it comes to this particular statistic. And he just loves to state it because it makes him sound like he is highly intelligent and definitely, I'm someone who should listen to on, gun control, gun violence, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not. So anyway, the claim itself has some problems. Okay. So first of all, his claim where he talks about this is the fact that it's most gun control zealots who like to quote statistics from activist groups that are provably false in order to blow up or make bigger the danger of guns in America. And I can tell you, Paul Pelosi getting hammered like that, getting the hammer, he actually falls in the much bigger group of violence and violent deaths in America than any of them by like the AR-15, for an example, the scary black weapon that's out there. Hey, I want to throw a shout out really quick to the Kevin Allen Show. Kevin Allen Show followed my Facebook account a while ago, and he has, and the show itself has finally popped into the chat here. I am honored that you have come and joined us. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin Allen, for showing up. I do appreciate it. He's over on Facebook. All right. So going back to the piece here, where we're talking about from the Politcal Insider, of course, is the fact that they include, again, like I said, they include suicides as in their statistics as gun violence and accidental discharges of a personal weapon, among plenty of other things. Okay. Now, if you continue on down in the piece down here at the bottom, the Washington Post actually did a fact checked Cory Booker's previous efforts to claim that more Americans have died of gun violence than all the wars, and was unable to rate this as true. Now, keep in mind, the Washington Post is a left-leaning outlet, and if they could go through and label it even as mostly true, they are going to go ahead and do that, but they're not going to do that. Now, according to Statista, the number of American war dead from just the Civil War, World War II, World War I, Korea, and Vietnam, those wars add up to 1,236,640, okay, for deaths. And according to the UC Davis, just in 2019 alone, there were 14,861 firearm homicides. Now, if you extrapolate just to 2019 and you extrapolate it to try and get it to add up to, again, just the Civil War, World War II, World War I, Korea, and Vietnam. And one thing I'm just going to point out historically, all of those wars, each time that a war has happened and been closer to modern times, we've actually lost less people. Okay. So they're not even counting the Revolutionary War, which is the biggest amount of people that have died in our history. Okay. So there goes Revolutionary War, then it goes Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, and it keeps dwindling down as we get closer and closer to modern times. So keep that in mind. Okay. But if you just take 2019 and go up against just the Civil War, World War II, World War I, Korea, and Vietnam, the Politcal Insider, the UC Davis actually states that it would take 83, not 52, but 83 years to see the same number of firearm homicides as just those wars. Now, again, we're not even talking about the Revolutionary War. So the number that's out there, the numbers just do not add up. Okay. And so why does this guy continue to do this? Well, I mean, the only answer that I can think of is that he just wants to sound like he is intelligent and to blow it out of proportion. But the guy is a complete moron. I'm sorry. He just is, I am Spartacus. Yeah, whatever. Anyway. All right. So, I laugh at these guys because they come up with stuff. And what's even worse is they come up with things that are factually easy to check, to just verify. All you have to do is do a couple of Google searches. I mean, here again, this is Statista, which is a website that's pretty easy to find. And then of course you can find this whole UC Davis thing, online too. I mean, I can't, they just drive me nuts, and they do it so often just to try and deceive the public, because the public is not, well, they're not checking these people. They really aren't. They're just not checking them. Okay. So, anyway, so that's Cory Booker, whatever. I am Spartacus. Yeah, he like I said, he's got about the intelligence of the alcohol content in my glass. All right. So the other big thing that happened this past week, and keep in mind, there are a lot of huge things that happened this past week. A lot of stuff that keeps rolling forward. But one of the big things that came out this week is Project Veritas. Project Veritas does these wonderful undercover videos, okay? And what they do is they put a plant who goes and meets somebody, their target in a social setting, and starts to get them talking about whatever particular issue that Project Veritas is actually looking for. Sometimes they will try and catch the person and have them talk on camera and things like that. But what they do is they will film it, and it's an undercover filming. Now, okay, just quick, legal note that depending upon where this is going on, there may or may be legal ramifications, although Project Veritas has been taken to court on multiple occasions, and they have been exonerated on multiple occasions. Okay. But the thing about this is that this particular video, this last one that came out, had to deal with Pfizer and a high up individual within Pfizer who is claiming that Pfizer is actually utilizing coronaviruses and mutating them in their labs in order to try and anticipate the next variant that comes out, or the next mutation, so that they can get their vaccine prepared and set up ahead of time, so they can try and prevent this. Okay, so here's the thing, and in multiple times, multiple occasions, yes, I can kind of see where this might benefit Americans, might benefit health. But the problem here is the fact that we've just finished a pandemic that was based off of a Chinese laboratory who has done what's called gain of function research, or in other words, mutating a coronavirus in order to make it more powerful. And that is somewhat of what they are questioning with this particular issue. Now, I don't know this for certain, but my understanding is that gain of function research, and the reason why it's being done off of our shores, is because of the fact that gain of function research as a generality to create bioweapons is actually illegal here within the United States, which is part of the reason why we farm it out to different countries like Wuhan, China, and actually even over in Ukraine, there's been some claims that there are bioweapons labs over there. Okay. Now, the thing about it is, though, is that even if Project Veritas's video was questionable, which I'm going to be honest with you, I mean, again, they've been challenged in court multiple times. They've been challenged, for the veracity of their claims and the legality and so on and so forth. I mean, they've spent a lot of money in court and they've been victorious many, many times. So that lends credence to their particular style of investigative reporting. All right. However, the media and big tech once again have collaborated in order to censor, because after this video came out, and by the way, it was an explosive video, okay, because of the fact that not only did the individual out Pfizer in terms of what they were doing, but that same individual apparently got violent and committed assault against let's see, what is his name? I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. James O'Keefe. They actually committed assault and smashed one of James's iPad, reportedly. Now you can kind of see, I'm gonna pop this up here. So let me do this, and you can kind of see the video playing just over my shoulder up here, right up there. And you can see, I'm not going to play the audio, but you can kind of see and maybe read some of the closed captioning that's going on there. But basically essentially what he was saying is that they're going very slow. They're creating these things. They want to try, and they don't want to accelerate it too much because of the fact they don't want it to, turn into a bioweapon, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things that is crazy about this is the fact that not only did the video come out, but almost immediately, the media and big tech conglomeration jumped on it and started blocking it. And I'm talking like Google. There was reports of people searching Google for this, and they didn't get Google responses. Google, in fact, was saying that they were unable to find it. I know several, like YouTube, blocked it and banned it. You had Twitter, obviously, under Elon Musk, left it up, and so did Rumble, by the way, the free speech alternative to YouTube, which I highly recommend you go over and sign up for a subscription over there, or not sign up for a subscription, but sign up and then subscribe to your favorite outlets over there, because they are growing. But the thing about it is that, again, you have the conglomeration of media and big tech trying to block the truth from getting out, and getting into the hands of the people. This is again, they're trying to cover up the truth. Then the truth basically, realistically comes out about this is that, again, you're looking at Pfizer and Moderna, and especially these organizations that are essentially creating these vaccines, which are not vaccines, but they got to modify the definition of a vaccine in order to call it a vaccine. And it doesn't actually prevent you from getting COVID, and all these other claims and things that we have seen throughout the course of COVID. But now they're trying to block information from getting into people's hands about the inner workings of what's happening within these corporations and these organizations. Okay. Now, if they could anticipate virus mutation, then we would have, honestly, we would have a much more successful flu season, which is the flu shot is literally hit or miss. Sometimes they get it right and they get lucky and our bodies can fight off the flu. But at other times they're wrong and we end up with a bad flu season. It happens. And it's because of the fact that they can't necessarily anticipate the way that something is going to mutate. Okay. So anyway, I'm just telling you, keep an eye on this because again, media and big tech still have not figured out that this is a problem, that blocking the free speech of Americans is not, that's a no bueno. That's not kosher. Okay. Now, the thing about it is with this video coming out, of course, Project Veritas always reaches out to the other side in order to get comment. They reached out to Pfizer. They wanted to get comment on the video. They wanted to get comments on what the person was saying. There's even some questions about verification of who this person was, et cetera, et cetera. So far, no one has been able to refute what's been going on. But Pfizer, ironically, after this story broke, took basically almost about 24 hours to respond. Now, they finally did, and I'm going to pop this over here, and they finally responded. But the thing that is really, really obvious in terms of missing this is because of the fact that when they responded, well, here, it's a lengthy statement, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. And I want you to really and truly listen because I don't think they're necessarily responding to Project Veritas's claims and the claims made by the gentleman in the video. In the ongoing development of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, Pfizer has not conducted gain-of-function or directed evolution research. Working with collaborators, we have conducted research whether the original SARS-CoV-2 virus has been used to express the spike protein from new variants of concern. This work is undertaken once a new variant of concern has been identified by public health authorities. This research provides us a way for us to rapidly assess the ability of an existing vaccine to induce antibodies that neutralize a newly identified variant of concern. We then make this data available through peer-reviewed scientific journals and use it as one of the steps to determine whether a vaccine update is required. In addition, to meet U.S. and global regulatory requirements for our oral treatment, Paxlovid, Pfizer undertakes in vitro work, e.g. in a laboratory culture dish, to identify potential resistance mutations to, and I can't even pronounce that, but one of Paxlovid's components. With a naturally evolving virus, it is important to routinely assess the activity of an antiviral. Most of this work is conducted using computer simulations on mutations of the main protease, a non-infectious part of the virus. In a limited number of cases where a full virus does not contain any known gain-of-function mutations, such virus may be engineered to enable the assessment of antiviral activity in cells. In addition, in vitro resistance selection experiments are undertaken in cells incubated with SARS-CoV-2 and the one of the ingredients in our secure biosafety level 3 BSL-3 laboratories to assess whether the main protease can mutate to yield resistant strains of the virus. It is important to note that these studies are required by U.S. and global regulations for all antiviral products and are carried out by many companies and academic institutions in the U.S. and around the world. All right. So out of that statement, okay, did they claim that what the gentleman, and I believe his name is John, let's see, what's his name? Yeah, Jordan Tristan Walker. Did they refute anything that he might have said? Did they say he did not work there? Did they say that he was not in charge of what he said he was in charge of, or anything along that? Did they actually state that any of the information that was contained in the Veritas video was incorrect? And the answer to that, of course, is no. What they are trying to do is they are trying to weasel around what was actually said, and they're trying to do essentially a bunch of legal doublespeak, realistically, in this. Okay. So, yeah, this is going to be a developing story over time, and so this is something to watch. But just keep in mind that, again, we're dealing with censorship of the big state, and yeah, they are having some serious issues with the revelation that Pfizer is actually playing with SARS-CoV-2. Okay. All right. Now, let's go over here. All right. Let's see. Oh, so another thing that happened this week is that they kicked out, the federal government kicked out a jobs claims report. And they are basically saying that because inflation dropped, okay, now keep in mind, inflation is just one key indicator of our economic status. But apparently inflation dropped something like 2.5%. All right. And what they ended up with is, of course, Joe Biden running around on Twitter. I've been watching on Twitter. His intern, who is his Twitter advocate, has been posting all over about how the American Inflation Reduction Act is working and all of this other stuff, just like what he does with the gas thing. And of course, this is because of numbers that have come out based off of December's numbers. Okay. Now, the thing about it is with this is that a lot of people don't understand is that December's retail sales numbers were literally abysmal. A lot of people did not spend as much at the holidays and during the holidays, during that time in terms of spending a lot of money because of the fact that inflation was hitting the pocketbooks over and over and over again. Now, the one thing that the Democrats do, and they do this quite often, okay, is that they are trying to tell you that, oh, it dropped, so we should be celebrating. Yay. But the thing that they forget, and they hope that you forget, and they hope that this show forgets, is the fact that even though inflation dropped 2 percentage points, okay, we're still higher than when Joe Biden came into office. All right. Our inflation numbers are still at essentially record highs for the last, 40 years. Now, we didn't reach our peak, but we're still way above where we were when Trump left office. Trump left office, I think we were at like 1.3%. Okay. And so this is the thing about it in terms of all of these economic reports and everything else. You have to read between the lines in the fine print. Well, the American people, honestly, they're not taking it. And this came out from the Politcal Insider. Okay. The consumer confidence dwindles as economic fears rise. Now, most of our economic folks that are out there, they are saying that we are right on the precipice of being in a recession, that we are looking at potentially stagflation, which for a lot of people who don't know what that essentially means is high inflation and zero growth. We don't have any growth. Now, even though Biden's administration is claiming growth, you need to validate those numbers. You need to look at it because they are manipulating them. I can almost guarantee you they are manipulating them. But based on this report, consumers feel 13% less confident about their financial outlook now than what they did just a single year ago, with the overall dip in optimism representing the second largest year-over-year drop in the last 12 months. The bleak forecast came courtesy of WalletHub's Economic Index Monthly Survey that evaluates economic prospects based on 10 components of consumer sentiment, including finances, purchasing plans, and employment opportunities. Okay. So basically, no matter what kind of lipstick Joe Biden tries to put on the economic pig, it's still a pig. We are in a challenging time when it comes to our economy and the amount that you're able to buy with a dollar. I mean, I've seen people going around and talking about, eggs being astronomical prices, which there is another factor in that. I'm hearing from certain places that it's essentially has to deal with supply, of course. But you also have, just in general, people are paying more for the same products and services that they did a year ago, and more than they did when Joe Biden or when Donald Trump left office. And so, Joe Biden is trying to gloss over all of this. So don't fall into it. I mean, seriously, do not fall into it. And realistically, I mean, outside of cutting back on spending, which honestly is probably the only thing that they can do right now, other than, Reagan had, well, and let me go back. Carter actually had it right. Carter had the right guy in at the right time. Problem was they didn't implement the plan. Reagan kept that finance guy at the Federal Reserve. That person went ahead and implemented what Carter was originally going to do, and Reagan actually took credit for it, which essentially is you've got to raise interest rates higher than the inflation rate in order to put a stop on inflation. What you're trying to do is you're trying to dry up the money supply. And right now, with Joe Biden's massive spending bill, even the last thing that they did, that McConnell went ahead and bowed over and said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and vote for this omnibus spending bill. That thing, we still haven't seen it yet. And by the way, too, Joe Biden is still touting his student loan forgiveness plan, or at least, let me rephrase that. His intern on Twitter is still touting the student loan forgiveness plan as well. So all of these things are going to do nothing for us. They're going to push inflation up. They're going to keep things going up. And we're in for a rough period of time. Okay. And Breitbart actually came up and talked about this. So U.S. inflation and consumer spending cooled in December. Prices are up 5% over last year. Now, if you recall, they were up 7% at one point in the middle of the year in 2022. Toward the end of the year, like I said, they started to come down. Inflation started to come down. But again, the tagline that the White House is going to use is, "Oh yeah, things are getting better. What we're doing is working." And no, it actually isn't. It actually isn't working that well. Sorry guys, but you're once again, you're lying. All right. And in fact, the Federal Reserve, the last I heard was that at their next meeting, they're talking about potentially raising interest rates once again, only this time being 0.25%, instead of their 0.5% and so on and so forth. But consumers obviously are getting a hit, and they're understanding of what's going on, because consumer spending, according to this article, consumer spending fell about 0.2% from November to December, and was revised to show lower to show a drop of 1% from October to November. And last year's holiday sales, they're talking about 2022, were sluggish for many retailers, and the overall spending figures for the final 2 months of 2022 were the weakest in 2 years. Okay. So again, the White House is trying to make it sound like they're doing all these wonderful things for our economy, but they're actually not. They're not doing these wonderful things for our economy. Now, oh, I know why. All right. So, cancel culture has reared its head once again. And I caught this out of the Epic Times. I don't know if you remember this, but sorry, let me take this. I don't know if you remember this, but this wonderful Colorado baker by the name of Jack Phillips went all the way to the Supreme Court with regards to his religious beliefs. And unfortunately, because he went all the way to the Supreme Court and because he won that case, he has become a target for all sorts of miscreants and idiots trying to make the name for themselves. And so he now is back in hot water. And for whatever reason, I honestly, I don't understand this, but Colorado and their court system, why they didn't learn their lesson from the first time, I have no idea. But these people are just a glutton for punishment, to be honest with you. But I caught this, and let me go ahead and show you this article, because I caught this article in the Epic Times. So apparently there is another court case against Jack Phillips. Now, Jack Phillips honestly is, he's got a lot of internal constitution, and he has a lot of integrity. He has a lot of wherewithal, and he is doing a fabulous job standing up to these people, to be honest with you, with regards to this. But apparently somebody came in and wanted him to handcraft a gender transition cake. Now, if you know anything about Jack Phillips is a religious man. He does not believe in same-sex marriage. He does not believe in gender transitions. He is very, very true to his faith. And he openly said within the first court case, he openly said that you can buy any cake that I have in my shop. If you want to buy something that's off the shelf, I am more than willing to sell that to you. It doesn't matter to me, what is going on. But I am not going to put my artistic talents towards something that violates my religious beliefs. And this is where the rub gets drawn. Now, the thing that I have a question for is, do these people not have any other bakers to go to that can do these jobs? I mean, seriously, it may not come out the same. It may not come out looking the same, because this guy might just be like some artistic savant of cakes or whatever. But the fact of the matter is I'm sure there's other bake shops, especially within Colorado, that can go and do this. I mean, honestly, yeah, I just don't get it. I don't understand why they have to continue to go after him, other than they're trying to bludgeon him to death and get him to submit to their whims. And if anybody, I'm going to tell you right now, if anybody wants a clear cut, I don't necessarily want to call him a hero, but somebody to look up to, I would suggest looking into this guy and seeing if he is somebody that you can look up to in terms of his faith, his sticking to the faith, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, apparently the, what is this? The Colorado Appeals Court rules against him in a case over this gender transition cake. So he got pulled into court. He got the original court that basically found that Phillips had violated the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act by refusing to serve this person, Scardina, because of his transgender status, and that the law itself did not violate Phillips' rights. Okay. So then, of course, obviously he appealed it. Jack appealed it. And in the new ruling, the College Court of Appeals affirmed that affirmed the Denver court's decision, finding that it gave all parties the benefit of its careful attention to the evidence and arguments they presented and rendered a thorough order that dispassionately explained the reasons for its rulings. The legal proceedings were, quote, not marked by any hostility toward Masterpiece or Phillips, but by a desire to punish or target them, or by a desire to punish or target them based on their religious views. Now, the Alliance Defending Freedom is the legal representation for Phillips, and Jake Warner, who is a senior counsel, essentially expressed disappointment at the appellate court decision, saying that free speech is for everyone. No one should be forced to express a message that violates their core beliefs. Now, I can tell you right now that they are going to go on December 5th, 2022. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments in the 303 Creative case, which involves a Christian web designer who argues Colorado's law requiring her to create websites to celebrate same-sex weddings also infringes on her constitutional rights. Now, that's the one that's in the Supreme Court right now, and is expected to rule on that case by June this year. But I fully expect that if something comes back to where this is not going to, they're just going to go and continue all the way to the Supreme Court. So do not be surprised if you hear about Jack Phillips and Masterpiece Cakes back in front of the Supreme Court once again due to their religious beliefs. So, I mean, it's sad that we have to go through this. It really is, because realistically, I mean, again, if we in America kept our live and let live. Okay, let me rephrase that. If a certain faction within America kept with the American live and let live philosophy, none of this would be happening. All of this stuff, they would just go find another baker, and things like that. But instead, they are targeting this man because they literally want him to go out of business, doing what he loves and protecting his religious freedoms at the same time. Okay, so not only is Cory Booker an example of the idiocy of the left and some of our Congress people in Congress, people in Congress today, but last week, I think it was Wednesday, maybe it was Wednesday, it might have been Saturday that I talked about this. But if you recall, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, came out and essentially said that that the Trump tax cuts paid for themselves, and in fact, they increased the IRS's revenue stream and tax collection than years before the tax cuts were put into place. Well, AOC apparently has not read that CBO report. And why? I don't know why, to be honest with you, but she is now on record blaming the Trump tax cuts for the deficit spending that they are in, when she was asked by a reporter whether or not Democrats have spent too much. Look, again, she claims to be, and I say claims, but she claims to be an economics major, and she claims to be understanding of economics. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I really don't believe it, because of the fact that, again, she is blaming the Trump tax cuts for the deficit when the tax cuts clearly generated more revenue by the Congressional Budget Office itself, their report that came out and said that they clearly paid for themselves and they also increased revenue. So she is a complete, I mean, I hate to say these dopey people. I mean, they're dopey people. I just don't get it. I don't get it. How can we elect these people? They're supposed to. Anyway, what's even worse though is I'm hearing that she actually may get a key spot on the House Oversight Committee, according to this report. So this economics person who doesn't understand Economics 101 is potentially going to get a key position on the House Oversight Committee, which is a very powerful committee. It's one of the more powerful ones within the House of Representatives. And if she were elected, so there have been conversations, apparently, according to Politico, that, and she actually told Politico this, that Friday, that there have been conversations about her being picked as a vice-ranking member, but she stressed that nothing's been finalized. Okay. Now, if she were chosen for the number 2 position, Ocasio-Cortez would become the lieutenant to the ranking member, Jamie Raskin, who's a Democrat out of Maryland, and play a leading role in setting the course for Democrats to counter the GOP plans to investigate various aspects of the Biden administration. And Raskin apparently is undergoing cancer treatment, so therefore his deputy could take on more responsibility, including sitting in for the ranking member for hearings during any absences. However, a Democratic aide insisted to Politico that any member can sit in for the ranking member. Once again, this just demonstrates that the Democrats do one thing and they do one thing really, really well. And that essentially is that they close ranks around people, around the people, their cohorts, let's say. They close ranks around them and present a united front against all people who try to attack them from the outside. And this is a bit of a problem. But I guess hearings are being scheduled next week, which this was written on, I don't know, Friday or something like that. So hearings are scheduled for next week. One is set to take place on Wednesday. That's titled Federal Pandemic Spending, a Prescription for Waste, Fraud, and Abuse, which of course they want to take a look at that. So anyway, I don't know how far this has gone. I mean, I've kind of pulled this a couple of days ago. But yeah, this is not good. This really is not good, that if she ends up sitting in the vice chair, she is going to cause some serious monkey wrenches for the Republicans and trying to get their agenda put through. Okay. So time check here. Okay. I'm good. One thing that happened this week, and actually just in the last couple of days, all of a sudden, my Twitter activity has increased dramatically in the last couple of days. And part of it is due to the fact that I went after, and by went after, I mean, I started calling out the lies that this Erica Reports, it's at Erica Reports is the account. And I started calling out that individual's lies. And I started to realize that because of the way that they were, phrased, and they were consistently coming back, the same questions, the same statements, everything else, phrased exactly the same way. And they just kept consistently coming back, made me think that it was a bot. And so I happened to run across a screenshot of another person who essentially was asking the same question. So I asked the question of the account. I said, "Hey, is this you?" And showed the screenshot. And I did that, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 times. Well, I ended up getting blocked by that individual, which ironically, they never answered the question. You would think that a real life person and owner of the account would actually come on and say, "Yes, I'm a real person," and then of course block me. But they, if they wanted to. But apparently they didn't, and they never answered the question, and they just went ahead and blocked me. Well, because of that interaction, my interactions started going up and up and up. Well, I guess I'm not the only one, because there were a bunch of others that were starting to pop up and say, hey, I'm starting to see like my feeds are getting more active and I'm starting to see more and more people. Well, then, not saying that is any relation to this, but the Post Millennial came up with this article, and this makes it really, really interesting because, once again, we're dealing with, Twitter, and the more that Elon Musk finds out about what happened over at Twitter, the worse and worse it gets. We've had like 15 Twitter file dumps and stuff like that, and it's just been showing all kinds of stuff. But this popped on the 26th of this month, which basically Elon Musk reveals the secret Twitter labels that caused shadow bans on conservatives. And apparently he was talking to David Rubin during a late night powwow, and he revealed some of the tags or some of the internals that Twitter was using in order to cause shadow bans on them. And so I'm just wondering if he just went ahead and their accounts aren't just hit. This is what Rubin tweeted. Rubin's tweeted out, accounts aren't just hit with labels that are obvious to insiders. They now found more secret labels, which are causing shadow bans. My account was hit with all three. Recent abuse strike, recent misinformation strike, recent suspension strike. Now, I have used the online shadow ban check sites. I've used a couple of them to check my account. And every single time that I do, it comes back clean. But what I can tell you, though, is that within the last couple of days, my activity has essentially grown exponentially. And by exponentially, I mean exponentially to me. My followers, I'm starting to see followers. I've like posted my Twitter tagline or sorry, my Twitter username, and people are starting to follow me. I think I had like earlier the last couple of days, I had maybe just over 150 followers. Now I'm at something like almost 300. So I've almost doubled the number of followers on Twitter. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that those are all legit followers, but just the mere fact that these people are seeing my tweets, they're responding to my tweets, and they're following me now, following my account, is making me wonder if something happened over the course of the last couple of days. Now, I can tell you this much, that Twitter has also said, and I saw this, Twitter support has also said that on February 1st, accounts that have been banned for illegitimate reasons can appeal their suspensions. Now, if you recall, my other account that I have on Twitter got suspended for a couple of weeks, and then it got suspended again. And then all of a sudden I got permanently banned for no reason. They never once told me what Twitter rule did I actually break, regardless of how many times I asked Twitter support, what rule did I break? Can you explain to me what tweet is this problem? So on and so forth. It fell on deaf ears. So I guarantee you, on or about February 1st, I am going to ask about my other account to see if I can get the suspension lifted. Now, to be completely honest, my other account name on Twitter, I'm not really too thrilled about. I took it just because I wanted to get on Twitter. And so chances are, once it's unsuspended or once it's unbanned, I will probably just close it out and continue with what I have under the Whiskey_Musings Twitter handle. But it's the principle of the thing. I want to know, first of all, why was I banned, if they can tell me, and if not, can they release my ban, which I think I was banned, without prejudice, or with prejudice, I should say, with prejudice for no vocalized or communicative reason. But it's not just Twitter. Now, we've had questions on this show. We've had questions. Other people have had questions. Is Twitter the only social media site that is doing this? Well, we already know that Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan was talking about the FBI telling him about potential Russian disinformation coming. And right after that happened, or right after that communication happened during those conversations with the FBI and so on and so forth, they immediately saw, or Facebook immediately saw, the Hunter Biden laptop. I've explained to you on this program that the FBI and other entities, other intelligence entities, communicated directly to Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and Twitter. This is all throughout the Twitter files that have come out. And they have had meetings with big tech and so on and so forth with the FBI, the CIA, the ODNI, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Now, we now have Meta, which is the owner of Facebook. Meta's global, what do they call him? Global Affairs president. His name is Nick Clegg, admitted that they censored the Hunter Biden story in case fact checkers wanted to review it. So here we have proof, once again, that Facebook actually did censor the Hunter Biden story. And I've maintained on this program, and I'm going to say it again and again and again, the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop story suppression was the biggest nationwide interference within the 2020 election. Because of the fact that that story was not allowed to live and come out into the public eye and the public sphere, and because of the fact that they worked so hard to keep that laptop story hidden at the very tail end of the 2020 election cycle, is a huge, or made a huge impact on how people voted. And I go back to the statistics again. They had polls that came out afterward. 16% of the people who answered those polls stated that if had they known about the Hunter Biden laptop story, they would not have voted for Joe Biden. Joe Biden only won by around 4% of the total votes. And so because of that, I'm telling you, I understand everybody is all up in arms about, the election interference, the fraudulent voting and everything within each state. But this is what I'm telling you. This is a difference. And this is the difference in my stance, is the fact that this is the one singular event that was done on a nationwide basis that affected the votes. Okay. That's what I'm saying as far as that goes. Now, each individual state that are out there, especially the bellwether states, the indicator states, or what they call what do they call them? The states that actually make a difference in terms of the count. Yes. Okay. There's inconsistencies. Totally get it. But that's not, again, that is on a state by state basis. That was not something that was done across the entire United States. So anyway, and so that came out. Now I've got two other things, and then I've got two real quick questions for Whiskey. So bear with me for just a second. I wanted to bring this up because I've talked about this before. Everybody is talking about Ukraine. Everybody's focused on Ukraine, so on and so forth. And they're not paying attention to what's going on with China. I've talked about it on this show. The China-Taiwan thing is going to come to a head. It's going to have to sooner or later, because China right now is bleeding money. They do not have enough money to take this on. They're going to have to do something in order to regain some profits. And one of the things that they've been doing here recently is they've been adding things to their Navy. They've been adding bases. They've been taking an extreme look at places like South America and Africa and even Afghanistan, which we just left, for natural resources and things like that in order to expand their impact upon the global economy. And so this is a big thing, but China's buildup, China's naval buildup, is starting to worry U.S. military leaders out of the national defense. And I told you on this program, I think it was last episode, how there was a report that came out that of all the munitions that we're sending over to Ukraine, there is worry that if something were to happen with China and Taiwan, that if we got into a conflict with them, we would run out of our munitions fairly quickly. And so this is dangerous. This is scary. Our whole global stability has completely gone amok because we have Joe Biden in office, honestly. And so that's the thing. That's just, yeah. Okay. Last thing, if you recall, I'm going to leave you on a really good note, actually. Last thing, if you recall, I talked about this, hockey's Ivan, Provorov, I believe is how his name is pronounced, where he basically decided that he didn't want to wear the warm-up jersey, which was the pride flag jersey. Well, it's not just here in the U.S. where people are standing up. Australia, apparently, according to Outkick, Australia itself has a basketball team that decided to refuse to wear the pride jerseys, citing their religious beliefs. And the coach has said that they were proud of the decision. So it's not just here in the U.S. that we're trying to fight this I'm going to call it a cancer, in terms of you must do what we say you do and bow down to this. This is essentially a Western world, in particular, a Western world challenge and issue. And so it's not just here in the U.S. that people are standing up. There's other places that are standing up as well, and other Western cultures that are traditionally built off of religious tenets and religious foundations that are standing up to these people that are trying to essentially quash things with regards to religion and religious beliefs. So bravo to them for deciding to refuse to wear the pride jerseys and citing their religious beliefs on that. Okay. So now comes to the part of the show where we go with, and I got to find it. There we go. Where we go and find out, and reach into the mailbag for questions for whiskey. And I've got two of them tonight. This is a double feature. Okay. The first one comes from Bonnie over on Rumble. And she basically asks, hey, Whiskey, can you please go over if the vice president can declassify documents again? Thank you. It's 100% clear. In fact, if you reach into your Constitution and read Article 2 that talks about the executive branch, the president, by being the commander-in-chief for all of the execution, and again, keep this in mind, this isn't legislation, this is execution of said legislation. As a part of the execution and being commander-in-chief, they have powers that the vice president is not going to have. The best way to think about this seriously, and corporations across the United States are built this way. Have you ever seen a corporation where the vice president has the same amount of powers as the president of a corporation at the same time that the president is there? And the answer to that, of course, is they don't. They usually have to bow to the president's choices or president's wishes, the CEO's wishes, because the CEO is the responsible party for the entire organization. That is the exact same way that our U.S. government generally works, is that the vice president does not have plenary power to be able to declassify documents. It's there because the president is the de facto head of the executive branch. And because of that, the president has powers that the vice president does not have. And that includes things like declassifying and classifying documents and those kinds of things. The vice president, if they were acting as the president, still would not have that power, because again, they do, their position is basically to monitor, manage, run the executive branch in the case where the president himself is out of bounds, but they can't make that decision. They cannot just arbitrarily say, hey, you know what? And the president can't do this either, because Obama actually did this in an executive order. It was way down in the executive order, but he actually did this. He actually said, hey, Joe can actually declassify documents. An executive order does not trump, pardon the pun, does not trump the Constitution. And so Obama can't just hand over power to the vice president. Just can't. Now, Congress can hand their power over, and that's actually written in the Constitution. But the executive branch, the president, cannot just hand over power, and the vice president cannot just take power, regardless of what is written there. The vice president, for the most part, historically speaking, is basically just a standby and wait for the president to die or become so incapacitated that they can no longer function as the president of the United States. That's literally all that person is. They're a safety net. They are not designed, the position is not designed for them to be able to do anything seriously meaningful, realistically. And so that honestly is essentially the case when it comes to that. All right. Second question comes in from Buddy Weiser on Rumble as well. Hey, Whiskey, is the U.S. Department of Education a legitimate organization according to the U.S. Constitution? If so, please direct me to the article, section, or amendment. Thank you. Well, buddy, I actually answered this question. I don't know if you remember, but I actually answered this question on another episode. So this one will be fairly easy from what I can recall from that other episode, because I kind of dug into it. The Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, is structured very similarly to the FBI. It is an executive branch institution. It is not a constitutional institution. It is in fact, the Department of Education and the purpose of education was not actually written in the Constitution itself. It was not even a part of the Constitution, sort of like abortion and marriage and all of these other things that the leftists want to try and throw in and say, oh, we have a constitutional, right to an abortion. We have a constitutional right to gay marriage. None of that shows up in the Constitution. It is not written in here. And if it is not specifically, like I've been telling everybody, the 10th Amendment, baby, that thing is very, very clear. If it is not written in here, nor is it specifically prohibited by this document, it automatically falls to the states and ultimately to the people. And so realistically, no, the U.S. Department of Education is not a constitutionally mandated construct. Now, that being said, we have actually a period of in our history. It was in I believe it was the early 70s, maybe the late 60s, early 70s, somewhere in there. I'd have to go back to my notes and stuff from my show that I talked about. But the U.S. Department of Education was actually abolished. In fact, it wasn't even a department at one point. It was just there wasn't even a Secretary of Education. It was developed and built in the executive branch, essentially in reaction to like an executive order or whatever. It's not a constitutional thing. It is not a purview. It's not part of the purview of the Constitution. And realistically, it was an overreach. In my opinion, it was an overreach by the executive branch. And it shouldn't even be there, just like the FBI. The FBI was essentially a response to a problem that they had. And rather than pass a law that would have created the FBI under Congress and turned it into a law, such like the OSHA as an example, the Organizational Health and Safety Administration, Organizational Safety and Health Administration. I got the acronym backwards. But OSHA was actually put into law by Congress. And so that's part of the reason why OSHA's mandate, when they did the mandate for the COVID vaccines, got overturned by the Supreme Court because it was not part of its charter when the law went into effect from Congress to create the OSHA entity. The U.S. Department of Education and the FBI are not congressional mandates. They are not laws and bills that have been passed by Congress. They are simply entities within the executive branch that exist because of the executive branch, and therefore they don't exist in the Constitution. And technically, if you really wanted to get down to it, could probably be challenged on that, although I doubt that the Supreme Court would actually overturn anything there. But realistically, no, the U.S. Department of Education didn't come into its existence as we know it today until I believe it was the mid to late 70s as a department. In fact, it wasn't even elevated until later in its creation. So there you go. So those are my two questions for Whiskey. If you have a question for me, please feel free to drop me a line at my email address, fans, that's FANS, or phonetically spelled Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra, at whiskeymusings.online. The link is in the description of the videos. You can go there and you can send me a question for Whiskey. You can also send me a pet of the week for my Wednesday segment that I have, that is Pet of the Week. I have one for this week, a wonderful pet and great looking animal. And so I have one for this Wednesday. But please send them in. I put them in the queue, and then I queue them up for the following shows. So go ahead and do that. Once again, that's fans, FANS, at whiskeymusings.online. And that is that is my final Whiskey Musings thought. Do me a favor, if you like my program, you like what I do, help me out. Go over to Rumble, create an account, and subscribe to the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel. I am attempting to reach 10K. That's 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. I have got a long way to go, and I could really use your help by going over there. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we'll see you on Wednesday next time on the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. Good night, everybody.